Good afternoon, members, and welcome to this public meeting of the first Climate, Environment and Biodiversity Subcommittee. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members may notice that when calling members to speak, I'll refer to them formally using their title, e.g. Councillor Jones, so that it is clear who the councillors are and who, by process elimination, are officers. Remote participants, we do have remote participants, yes. Please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video if you're not addressing the meeting. Writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you are in the hall, you can do this by your iPhone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted on the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including any votes which will be undertaken by roll call. If any members have to leave the meeting, please leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting, so we can keep track of whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions, and when referring to reports, please provide reference to the page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. Similar to the process now followed at full council, when considering motions or amendments which are substantive in nature, I will call a recess where necessary so that I may speak to seek governance advice on competency. This is good practice in governance terms and will also provide for governance to be able to collate and circulate terms of said motion or amendment to members in order that they have the opportunity to properly review it. I hope that this process makes matters more effective, and I seek members' support in implementing this. So we'll start with the agenda. Item 1, Sediment apologies and Chair's approval for members to remote participation. Claire, can you provide the sediment and any apologies, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can confirm we have all 9 members present this afternoon. We have 4 members present in the hall, being yourself, Chair, and Councillor Beretti, Dashper and Slater, meaning 5 members are present on Teams, being Councillors Dryborough, Hagman, Malcolm Johnston, McGregor and Walters. There remains 2 vacancies on this committee on behalf of the Novanti Group and the D&G Independent Group. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Item 2, Declaration of Interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest or statements of connection? No, doesn't appear to be any declarations. Moving on to... Oh, right. Councillor McGregor.
Sorry, yeah, I should probably just declare a statement of connection in my role at COSLA as Environment and Economy spokesperson for items 4 and 5, and item 5, he sits within my brief, but I won't leave the debate for that.
Can you just clarify, Gail, did you say you won't leave the debate?
No, it's a national role and this is local initiatives, so I'll stay in the committee.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. So moving on to item 3, initial meeting arrangements and future content report by the Interim Head of Economy and Environment. This report presents members with the arrangements for the new Climate, Environment and Biodiversity Subcommittee, and also outlines the previous work undertaken by the Climate Emergency Cross-Party Working Group and the proposed future content to be brought to the subcommittee. Simon Fieldhouse is here to take any questions on this report. Councillor Beretti. Sorry, take my glasses off.
Sorry, I put my hand up first so I know that you were going to ask questions, but I'll let Simon speak. Thank you, Chair. Nothing to add in addition to the report, just obviously sort of setting the scene out for where the committee is likely to be going.
Thanks for that, Simon. So, Councillor Beretti.
Thank you, Chair. And it's a welcome sight to see this group together and this committee finally meeting. And thank you, Simon, for the report and Stuart for the assistance. But I want to get straight down to business. On page 8 and 11, we have the scrutiny and decision-making criteria. And I just wonder how much scope there is, if there is any scope, where over the time we can, if we feel, modify any of the decision-making or the scrutiny items. And I'll bring your attention to the fact that on page 8 at 4.7, it doesn't mention on the second 2 bullet points the environment and biodiversity and activities which impact the region's environment and natural capital, and activities which have been impacted in the region's biodiversity and habitats. Now, our region has got quite a few different, let's say, assets. It starts with the air quality we breathe and what we do with our materials that go into air and into the atmosphere. And it also involves our marine areas, so whether it's immediately just off coastal or coastal areas. Now, do we actually capture all the decision making in right across the board? Because I'll give you an example from yesterday's Audit Risk and Scrutiny Committee, which in one of the cases where we're discussing a persistent chemical that's used in fire retardants, which we have to use because that's what there is. And my question to Sue Pithick-Hawkins was, are we looking for alternatives? Because it's the things that we don't see but are being used commonly, whether it's at council level, domestic level, or industrial level. So in effect, as any anthropogenic human intervention, whatever we use, or whatever practices we use, that is a question in this first item. Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Beretti. So essentially your question is around delegations for the subcommittee. As we know, the subcommittee and the delegations were agreed by full council. But I'll hand over to Claire. Claire, in terms of the governance around the subcommittee, adding or, for that matter, taking anything off the delegations, could you maybe clarify the position on that, please?
Okay, thank you, Chair. The delegations form part of the Council scheme of delegations to committees. Changes to that scheme are a matter for full Council. As you can see in the paper, the delegations for this committee were agreed at the full Council in March. So for any changes, amendments to the delegations, it would be a recommendation from this committee to first place review of standing order subcommittee and then on to full council. Thank you.
Tony.
So, excuse me, I'm just recovering from the flu, so that's why I'm coughing a wee bit. So if during the course of our work in this committee we decide or we think that the decision-making parts of the 8 to 11 may need tweaked, we can do that, but it then has to go to full council for ratification.
Yeah, that's my understanding of the situation, Councillor Beretti. Clearly this is the first meeting, so we're just getting up and running. And we're on a journey, so to speak. And it's something that we could discuss off table, or you could raise it again at some future point. Councillor Dashford.
Thanks, Chair, and welcome to your new role. Looking at page 8, on the bit about biodiversity, it mentions the local biodiversity action plan and the forest and woodland strategy. Just wondering, Simon, when can we expect these to come forward, particularly the forest and woodland strategy, which I'm aware was last revised in 2014, is that right? Thank you.
Simon.
Sorry, it flashed green. My apologies. Yeah, so both the Forest and Woodland Strategy and the Local Biodiversity Action Plan are currently being tendered for at this moment in time. Both are out of date, and both are required to form part of the local development plan process that we're undertaking. So we are aiming within the next 12 months to have those completed. We are looking at a refresh, not necessarily a rewrite, because both the initial biodiversity action plan and the forest and woodland strategy were constructed in such a way that they could be amended appropriately moving forward without the requirement for a significant rewrite. So we're working on those at this moment in time, and we'll bring something back to the committee once we've got a draft format for further engagement before we go out for public consultation.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Simon. Archie Driver, Councillor Driver.
Thanks, Chair, and welcome to your new role, as Councillor Dashford says. I don't have any problem with this report, but I can't see where we could potentially benchmark or, you know, get some case studies done and perhaps bring forward some suggestions to the appropriate committee later on as a climate, environment, biodiversity subcommittee. So obviously we've got benchmarking through APSI Energy and places like that, but there are other places where we can get some benchmarking as well. I think it'd be useful if we had a look at that as part of our upcoming committees to see where else we can find some case studies and perhaps take that forward to you know, the whatever appropriate committee.
Thanks, Archie. That's a good point. Looking at Stuart or Simon.
Happy to come back in, Chair. Yeah, more than happy to go away, Councillor Driver, and obviously look at some of the local government benchmarking and also sort of absolutely try and provide some context on a local level that can be brought before the committee. And we'll try and bring that back to a subsequent meeting, if that's okay.
That's fine, thanks.
Right. Thank you, Archie. Do you have any other questions? Councillor Dashford again.
Yeah, just one more, Chair. Thanks for letting me back in. The TPIH committee, I think one of the good things that's come out of that committee recently has been the amount of presentations that they've received from external partners and agencies, such as Lemonade. Obviously, this being a sort of similar committee along the same veins, I'm wondering if there's scope for maybe bringing external groups like SCAMP or the local D&G Red Squirrel Network, for example, to actually talk to us and, you know, provide presentations around what they're doing to support the environment in Dumfries and Galloway. I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that, Chair, or the officers. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good question, Ben. As part of the working group, we did receive presentations which were very helpful in terms of building up the knowledge of the members of the working group. And I'm thinking here that in terms of page 11 and the delegations, bullet point number 3 to receive presentations, would that potentially cover any sort of presentations that we might like to receive?
Aye, thank you, Chair. Yeah, that would cover anything. Obviously, if members are minded, they can provide directions to groups, and we can obviously approach external groups as required to ensure they can come along and present to the committee.
Thanks, Simon. And bullet point 3 does refer to stakeholders and partners. And I think probably the best approach, you know, more informally, that, you know, if we have discussions with Simon or any other members of the team out with subcommittee, we can, you know, we can look at that. I think we'll meet 4 times a year, so there'll be plenty of time to make arrangements. So I don't see Councillor Beretti.
Thank you, Chair. One other little issue which will at some stage and may need to be addressed, but we could do with some direction here from officers. In the occasion when we do have another meeting and the chair is, for whatever reason, not here, I was going to say incapacitated, but I wasn't quite certain how to put that, what happens? Because in the past, we did operate a sort of round robin to make sure that everyone got into the chair when it wasn't particularly effective. But at this stage, as this is a subcommittee, what is the procedure going forward?
Thank you, Tony. I'll pass over to Claire to clarify that.
Okay, thank you, Chair. It'd be the same procedure as any other committee where, if there wasn't a chair present, I would start the meeting and seek a nomination for the chair for the day, so to speak. Thank you.
Thanks. And I had a chat with you before the meeting started, Claire, in relation to substitutes. So I think it's important that we've got good numbers within the subcommittee. We're only a subcommittee of 11. So I would ask all members of the subcommittee, if they can't be present, if they could perhaps identify a substitute to sit on the committee for that particular meeting. Okay, I don't see any other speakers. I'm not letting Councillors Beretti or Dashford back in. So we'll move on to the recommendations. Are members happy to agree recommendations 2.1 to 2.3? Yep. Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to item 4. Climate Change Duties Report 2004 to 2025, report by Interim Head of Economy and Environment. So the Climate Change Duties of Public Bodies Reporting Requirements Scotland Order 2015 came into force on the 23rd November 2015 as secondary legislation made under the Climate Change Scotland Act 2009. The order, in terms of Schedule 1, requires listed bodies to prepare reports on compliance with climate change duties. The Council is a listed body for this purpose, and this report seeks to inform members of the Council's mandatory public bodies climate change duties report in brackets CCDR for the financial year 2024-25. Prior to approval from Environment and Infrastructure Committee on 4th of November 2025 and subsequent submission to the Scottish Government by the 30th of November 2025. Karen McLaughlin and Mo Agun are here to take any questions on the report. Mo, is there anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things. Apologies. In the recommendation 2.4, there is just a typo there when it says Table 4, Paragraph 4.7. That should read 4.6. And on Table 4 itself, when we issued the report, the working numbers, they were based on 24-25, but the Scottish Government issued their revised number just on Friday there. So we will reissue a report based on that. There is a very minor changes to our progress. Actually take us a wee bit good. It moves us from 42.8% in target to 75% to 44.9%, and the target to 100% takes us from 57.1 to 58.7. But as I said, we will reissue a revised report. Thank you.
Okay, Mo, thanks for that. So I'll open up to members' questions. Councillor Beretti.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions, if that's okay, Chair. Using point 2 of the scrutiny from item 3, the table 5 shows us the kilowatt hours of generation that most of our assets, I'm assuming the totality of our assets has. That's on page 18. Now, 3 years ago, we had similar figures come to another committee. It wasn't the climate group, but it was to do with percentages and generation. And at the time, I asked, or several of us asked questions about the cleaning of the panels that generate this electricity. Now, subsequently, with information that I got from some of the officers at the time, and in the likes of Cargan Towers, where we have quite a big asset, PV asset, the panels weren't at that stage, had not been cleaned and had not been inspected. Now, I'm going to suggest that, does anyone actually know how those panels, what they look like, how they're going to be inspected, and if so, are they ever going to be cleaned? Because clearly the cleaning of PV systems does impact quite substantially the generation that the PV can turn out. That is a loss to us, and as I say, it's point 2 from the scrutiny. I'm using that as a plug. That's my first question.
Mo? you like to answer that question?
Thank you, Chair. Totally hear and agree what you're saying, but what the difficulties we will have is around budgetary available in terms of our work in the repairs and maintenance. We are under pressure, especially with the panels being on the roof, etc., because you need to look at scaffold, etc. But I think that the difficulties we have here, they were more to do with the inverters themselves rather than the cleaning. And in the past 6 months to a year, we went mostly across the region and we repaired all the inverters. And as you can see from the numbers this year, the generation has increased comparison to last year. I don't know if Karen McLaughlin wants to add anything around the cleaning of the panel or not.
Karen, can you follow up?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, Mo, I can, with regard to Councillor Beretti's comments regarding Cargan Tower, the solar panels don't belong to the council. They're the landlords, so we wouldn't be able to do any cleaning with regard to that. The other solar panels that the council own, there is a maintenance contract in place, and as Mo highlighted, a lot of issues have been with inverters, and there has been inroads into replacing them. Thank you.
Just before I bring you in, Councillor Beretti, so in terms of Cargan Towers, presumably we pay all the utility bills for use of that building?
Yes, we do. And we get the electricity that's generated from the solar panels at Cargan Tower. We pay the landlord for that electricity, which means that we're getting clean energy rather than that amount of consumption would have been from the grid, which is not, as I'm explained.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Councillor Beretti.
Yeah, thank you. That was a bit of clarity. So within that question there, across our assets, all our assets, is there an actual cleaning regime and scrutiny? And on the second point that you've made, Karen, if we get the electricity that's on those, that's on the tower, it still means that if there's a reduction in the electricity, we could actually be getting more than what we're getting. I know that Mo has suggested that it is an issue of scaffolding, whereas already there are companies selling a service of drone activity to look at and clean panels using drones, because this happens down south and wherever they've got very big systems. So it's not as if there's not an object, there's not a way to do it. It's just that have we looked at this?
Thank you, Councillor.
Sorry, Mo or Karen, who's going?
Happy for Mo to.
Make your minds up.
I can pick up, that's fine. Thank you, through you, Chair. No, it's not something we explored, but I'm happy to work with the team to engage with the supply chain and see what can be available here for us in the Free Scalloway Council. And it could be something that we report back to this subcommittee in the future.
Okay, thanks, Bo. So if you asked your second question, I'm not entirely... No, okay, on you go.
This is good. Right, now, there's actually two, but the first one should be fairly simple. 4.8, page 18, we have apparently 5 buses. Now, again, this was a question which I'd asked a number of years ago, not to Stuart or anyone else, but I'm going to bring this up now. These buses, I was told, were in use for moving school kids around at the time. Now, I don't know what the accuracy of that is and whether or not these buses are in active service or if they're not in active service, because I do pass one of these buses in Dalry and I don't think it's moved in the last 6 months. So what is the story behind that?
I'm not entirely sure if we've got officers that could answer that question in terms of the use of the electric buses.
No, but what I can do, I can speak with colleagues in Transvaal and Gordon Bryce and provide a response after this meeting.
I'll be very generous with you, Councillor Beretti. I'll let you in one more time.
As this is a unique occasion, thank you very much, Chair. Right. It is interesting that last week at planning there was an application for one of our schools to have the roof, flat roof repaired and replaced because the previous flat roof had now come to the end of its life, and it was based on a felt structure. When I looked at the photographs, and the roof itself was in an ideal position for photovoltaic panels to be put onto it. Now, I did ask at the time Mr. Sutty about this. He kindly sent me on the photographs. My point here is that if there had been some pre-thinking about this particular structure, although we can't put on panels now because we have to actually now have another application to ourselves to put panels. But had this been thought about, the panels and the infrastructure, even if the panels could not be put on at the time, the infrastructure relating to the panels could have been put in place and the engineering of the wood structure could have been looked at. So I'm just wondering why, and again this goes back down to our first agenda item and looking at the things to consider, point 2, policies and strategies. So this should be a policy that every time we intervene in a building in Dumfries and Galloway, there should be a question, what's the potential of this building? Because the building in Kirkinner, we now have to put up extra scaffolding to do any work if we decided at some stage to put up PV to reduce the cost for the school.
My expectation would be that the planning department, they have policies in place in relation to climate and energy efficiency. But in terms of the question, I suppose this is around property services, isn't it?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the question, Councillor Beretti. I don't really have like a specific answer for you for Kirkinner because I don't know the mechanism what happened during the design stage. But what I can assure you, all our projects, when we work them out, there is always a drive and instruction for the team to look at energy efficiency, solar panels. So there could be reasons that sometimes the roof itself is not capable of taking extra weight or anything. But as I said, I don't know specifically for Kirkinner. I can clarify it and come back to you. But as I said, I can assure you in terms of energy efficiency, energy measures, anything from solar panels to efficient boilers to everything get taken into account for every project, budget permitting, of course, and in terms of programme. But I can clarify further, Kirkinner, for you, if that's okay.
Thanks for that, Mo. So I think Councillor Slater indicated with his hand up in the room, and then over to Councillor Driver thereafter. Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's regarding the efficiency of solar panels. It was said there, how do we check these, how much cleaning do they need? But in inverters, you can actually go to the single panel and check how much energy it's reading in that particular time of day. There's always a slight variation in panels, but it gives you a good indication of how well the panel's actually working. And if it needs any maintenance, you would see a significant drop of that panel. So you can actually you should be able to go to the inverter and see these numbers. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's more of a statement than a question, Councillor Slater, because we've already covered it. So over to Councillor Driver.
Thanks very much, Ian. It's about something that we talked about earlier on, and I think, the LDP is going to come up for consultation this year, and I think it's important this group puts something into that LDP consultation, so therefore we can say when you're doing council assets, you need to start thinking about what appropriate equipment that will deliver energy through renewable should be the way to go. But I think that's one of the things that we should be thinking about, probably at the next committee, saying we've got to put something into the LDP and say this is the way we think it should go.
Thanks for that, Archie. I'm going to pass over to Stuart to sort of respond to that statement. Archie, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Dryburgh, and I accept the sentiment behind your point, because as a council you would want to see the council doing everything that it possibly could in some of these agenda areas. The LDP, though, of course, will develop policy that has to be applied consistently across all property, regardless of ownership. So I think we will obviously be looking at policy around renewable energy infrastructure on buildings, in developments, but I think there's a crossover and a relationship actually more with internal council policy processes and procedures in terms of how we look at our own estate, the learning estate programme, etc., in terms of the standards that we're seeking to apply to that. So with that caveat, I think there's lots of opportunities for this subcommittee and the working groups that will come around development plan policy to get that right and to get the balances of those correct.
If I can come back in, Chair,
Yep, go ahead.
and it's right, it should be about policy, it shouldn't be about operational stuff, because once you get the things in place, you've got to have your maintenance schedules in place anyway. But I think getting that policy right, and I'll agree with you, it's not just about council assets, it's about every asset that will go through the planning committee, but we should have something in place to allow our operators and our staff or our contractors to do that maintenance on the thing. But the thing I was looking at was through the LDP, there are policies about renewable energy, and we need to make sure that we use that anyway.
Stuart, you anything further to add to that?
No, I think we note that. There's, I think, as I say, we understand the sentiment behind that. I broadly agree with all of that as well, and it's just the nuances of how we approach that and apply that. But I think the general feeling, I think, is that LDP3, as it progresses, it does give us the ability to essentially set out a bit of a step change in policy in some of these areas, and I think the contribution of the subcommittee to those debates will be really welcomed and very vital over the next year.
Thanks, Stuart. That's very helpful. Councillor Dashford.
Thank you. 4.19 mentions Dumfries and Gully Council's fair trade zone status and the ongoing project to renew it. I suppose, has it been renewed? How's that coming along? And also, what do we do to actually promote our status as a fair trade zone locally? Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Simon, are you able to respond?
Right, thank you. I believe it has been renewed, but I will go and check with the relevant officers to ensure that that is correct, as I'm not 100% sure at this moment in time, Councillor Asper.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands or indications of wanting to speak, so if members are content, I'll move on to recommendations. There's quite a big spiel there in terms of recommendations, so I'll ask members if they're happy to agree or note, for that matter, recommendations 2.1 to 2.4. I'm getting nods in the room. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 5, Local Heat Energy Efficiency Strategy, LHES. Update report by Interim Head of Economy and Environment. Who's going to be speaking to this?
So Simon's in the room and Sarah is on.
So Simon or Sarah, do you have anything to add before we open up to members' questions?
Thank you, Chair. Nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beretti.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Simon, for this. Again, this LHES has already been in front of previous climate group on a number of occasions and in front of full council. So it's good to see an updated version of it, and essentially it gives us a pretty close and clear picture of what is available across, not just Dumfries and Galloway, but across the whole of the south of Scotland. But it is a tabletop exercise at point. Now, the next stage is to look at whether or not there is any further investigations to be made and where that might lead into some of the projects, because I believe there's 10 projects in Dumfries and Galloway that have been investigated or have potential. So that potential has to then go in front of someone to evaluate what is the actual full cost of extending that and potential pitfalls, because although it does go on businesses that are existent, what happens if those businesses go out go into liquidation or something changes? And I think also the other thing is that we would like to, I think we need to receive, and one of the recommendations I would also suggest to agree to receive further reports and scrutiny papers on the lease as we go forward, because I think that is essential, that we do get further updates so that we can see whether or not let's say the numbers are changing at the time.
Thank you, Councillor Betty. I guess what we're talking about here is the vulnerability of projects once we move into development. But Simon, you would like to say in response to the issue raised by Councillor Beretti?
Thank you, Chair. No, I mean, I think obviously the issues raised are ones that we are aware of, and obviously we are working in partnership to look at obviously the opportunities across the region that will maximise the benefits from the LHES work that we've done. We obviously wanted to bring back the prospectus that was obviously created in partnership with the South of Scotland Enterprise Agency, which is obviously identifying some of those key projects which obviously are kind of rated and valued as being sort of, I suppose, commercially viable. So we are in the process, obviously, working with colleagues to look at how we can take those forward, but more than happy to bring future reports back and updates on the LHEs as required, Chair.
Thanks for that, Simon. That's very helpful. I mean, it's a hugely significant project, and I think it would be useful both for elected members and for officers to have some element of scrutiny. Councillor Beth, before I let you back in, were you suggesting an additional, well, perhaps after other members have had the chance to ask their questions, you can put that forward as a formal recommendation, but you want to follow back on Simon's response? No? Okay, you were pointing your finger to him, but... Okay, I'll come back to you. I think Councillor Dryburgh next.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think this is a massive opportunity for Dumfries and Galloway and, of course, the south of Scotland. When you look at the report on the page 35, the EPC rating, for instance, it shows you what a massive difference these things can do. But I'm a jock. At the end of the day, I like to see things on the ground. And I just want to know a bit about timetabling, and perhaps you can give us an idea of the length of this particular project.
Good question, Archie. I'll pass over to Simon.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to defer to Sarah, who's obviously got more information in terms of the length of the LHEs as it stands at this moment in time.
Sarah, would you like to respond?
Thanks very much. Yeah, so the LHE strategy is a 5-year plan at the moment, and that will move as we go forward, obviously. We're all well aware that these types of networks, etc., take a number of years to develop. We have looked at the one in Dumfries, I think we're well aware of. We are being supported by Scottish Government's Heat Network Support Unit and by Zero Waste Scotland to look at the feasibility and viability of it, and also joining up with other opportunities within Dumfries, the Creighton campus, for example, and the Mid-Steeple, who are also looking at these opportunities. Stranraer is just starting to move forward. We're starting to develop that one just now. It's at the initial feasibility stage. Scottish Government have came back with our application and asked for further information, which we've provided, and we're now waiting to see whether we're going to get the support from them to develop that particular project. But it's looking very positive. They're very interested, particularly with everything else that's going on in Stranraer. There's a lot of really great stuff happening down there that will support. But yeah, there are lots of other opportunities as mentioned, and we can see in the prospectus. The prospectus has gone out recently to hopefully bring investors forward who want to develop in the region and who can bring funding, because obviously funding is a huge part of it, as mentioned in the report, and we need to look externally for that and how these can be developed. So it's early stages. Timescales, as I say, 5 years for the strategy. We'll be looking to renew that as we move on, but the development of a heat network itself depends individually on the area, whether it is very urban, very rural, you know, what type of technologies we can implement there, what opportunities we have for renewables.
Thanks, Sarah. Hugely significant and quite exciting, the prospectus moving forward. Archie, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, please, Chair. I think really it is a massive opportunity. This, we don't want to be missing out and things like that. But other organisations that might, and I'm sure they are involved in the perspective as well as the colleges and the universities and things like that. So can you give us an idea of how that's going?
Yes, I mean, most of the stakeholders, as you mentioned, have been contacted. Even from the LH strategy, there was a lot of stakeholder engagement took part there, right across the region. APSI as well have been involved in doing some feasibilities for us, high level feasibilities. But yeah, all the community planning partners are all certainly involved in it, and as I say, major stakeholders through SOCI as well. You know, SOCI are also engaging in bringing us all together across the south of Scotland. Into Scottish Borders as well. We're working closely with them and seeing where we can collaborate across the whole of the south.
I'll bring Stuart in. Thanks for that, Sarah.
And I think, thanks, Sarah, and I think we should also just name check a little bit the fact that there's a lot of collaborative work done through the Borderlands Growth Deal as well. There's and Councillor Drybrough, you'll be aware there's an energy programme there, and there's obviously some enormous projects in there, not least at Chapel Cross, which have a relationship, have a bearing, and those sort of collaborative efforts which involve then different aspects of Scottish Government, Scottish Borders and partners across the border, all then looking at the energy agenda in particular. And from the Borderlands Partnership perspective, they hope to be able to announce the projects that they are going to invest the energy programme allocations in at the beginning of 2026, and there are Dumfries and Galloway projects in there. So it is going to be, there'll be a number of projects both within here and some independently promoted ones that will move at some pace, I think, during 2026.
Excellent, thanks for that, Stuart. Councillor Slater.
Thank you, Chair. It's just the fact that obviously we're talking about heat power over the region as such, but at the moment we are actually all connected by electrical cables, so they are. So that's a good point. The other thing is, will these systems be looked at like nuclear power plants? Because Rolls-Royce have made units now that will fit at least 2 inside a standard football pitch, and something like that could be very good for the power station that was shut down a few years ago, and it's still in the middle of its closure. So I just wondered if these systems would be looked at, because to move energy around the area, we have got that system at the moment. But
yeah, thanks for that, David. I mean, we're sort of straying into the politics of it, because clearly the Scottish Government.
It's regarding the turbines or generators or windmills. This government has had to pay out over £100 million so far to companies not to generate power. And today, everything they say about all these things, our electricity bills just went up again by about another 15%, I think. So the idea is to bring electricity and the cost down. And just to quickly touch on nuclear, 6 kilograms of uranium will run a nuclear submarine for 30 years. That's just what I'm saying. It's a big cost to maybe build them, but they'll last for probably 50 years. And it's something I think, because you've got the cabling already in, I know the grid needs some upgrading, that'll need to be done. But if you've got half the project as such, that's half the answer probably to some. Anyway, that's just my general feeling. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Slater. That's noted. What I was going to say is, I mean, the Scottish Government have got a long-standing position on nuclear power, which differs from the UK Government. Stuart, were you wanting to come in relation to the first part of Councillor Slater's?
Yeah, just very briefly, and I'm happy to be added to or corrected by colleagues, but I think a lot of the projects that are embedded within the LHEs and certainly within the prospectus at the back, we're talking quite a lot here about opportunities for closed loop systems, opportunities for projects that can operate independently of the grid, whether that's an electricity grid or the gas network. So it's about trying to get a greater mix of energy supplies at play within the Dumfries and Galloway area, and that's partially because grid connections, as you rightly say, are quite difficult at the moment. There's a lot of network improvement required to allow all of the connections that are consented to be made, but there are lots of opportunities then to really get almost from a place perspective to start looking at solutions that are far more local, almost as you'll see some of those example projects are at a street level, and there's, without diving down rabbit holes here, there are all sorts of really interesting dimensions there in terms of relationship with data storage as well as, so there's a lot of complementary activity going on. I don't know if Simon or Sarah on the call would like to add anything on that sort of perspective from an approach, the sort of broad approach of the LHEs.
Simon?
Thank you, Chair, and through yourself. Now, just to reiterate, obviously, the points that Stuart's made, this is about obviously looking at how we can diversify our local energy sort of use and generation, and obviously sort of there is a commercial element in here, which is obviously where the prospectus is coming from, to obviously look at the using some of the projects that have been identified and some of the work that's been undertaken by Sarah and the team and sort of South of Scotland Enterprise to actually identify commercial opportunities and bring in companies that are able to deliver those at a local level.
Thanks, Simon. Do you want to come back in, Councillor Slater?
Yes, regarding looking at different systems, I've asked this before, but could a feasibility study be done on the weir at the Nith, because there used to be a power station there which generated electricity for Tequere. Now, technology's moved on in leaps and bounds, and you could fit what they call low-head turbine there. It's an Archimedes screw, and that could be done, and it could possibly produce half the electricity for the ice bowl. And I think it would help put Dumfries on the map, becoming net zero. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Slater. I'm aware that this has been a long-standing campaign for you on this, but I think we need to focus on the strategy that we have in front of us and the potential projects that are on there. But Simon, do you want to come in? Is there potential at all for any development along the lines of what Councillor Slater is proposing?
Thank you, Chair, and through yourself. Yes, there's always potential. We are looking, obviously, at, as Sarah said, this is a 5-year strategy for the LHEs. It will be reviewed. There will be other opportunities. It is just a question of resources at this moment in time, and obviously we're focusing on the priorities that we can deliver. But obviously the opportunities for utilising obviously hydropower is something we're experiencing and sort of looking into.
Thanks, Simon. If it's a different point, I'll let you in, Councillor Slater, but we should probably move on.
No, I think I'll just leave it, okay? For another day, maybe. Thank you.
I'm sure it will come back. I don't see any other indications of members wanting to speak, so I'll go back to Councillor Beretti. I think what you're proposing is an additional motion, which in effect is our recommendation, sorry, which essentially is procedural. Do you have a specific form of words for that, and do you have a seconder?
I've got some words down, but if the Chair or Stuart want to change it, so it's agreed to receive further reports and scrutiny reports on the lease project or the lease strategy or the lease results, because I'm not quite certain exactly at this stage what it is.
Thanks. I'll just double check with governance. It's recommendation. Do you have that noted, and is it competent?
Yes, Chair, yes, it is competent. But as you say, it was a procedural matter to agree to receive further reports on this issue as required.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Betty. Councillor Dashford.
I'm happy to second Councillor Beretti on that one, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so we shall move on to the recommendations with the addition of fourth recommendation, which will be 2.4. So are members happy to agree recommendations 2.1 to 2.4? Thank you. So I think we're now on to item 6. Any other business deemed urgent by the Chairman due to the need for a decision? I have no urgent business, so that concludes the meeting. Could I thank you all for your contributions, and I hope that as time passes you know, bear in mind this is our initial meeting, that the agenda will be developed as we progress. So thanks everybody for your contributions. Thank you.
Thank you.